Hey everyone, and welcome back. I'm Rick Fussell and this is the Ingrain Workshop. So if your supervisor is anything like mine, you'd know that that's just an unlimited source of YouTube content, one DIY project after another. A couple of months ago, I built a rustic miter saw station out here in the workshop. It caught the supervisor's eye and she decided that she wanted the same type of cabinets built in our kitchen in one of our overnight rentals in Gatlinburg, Tennessee, called Red Maple Cabin. That's coming up next here at the Ingrain Workshop. So this kitchen isn't that large. Like I had mentioned, it's for one of our cabins. And so the first thing I did is went into SketchUp and just drew out all the base cabinets and wall cabinets that are going to be in the kitchen. And then from there, I generated a cut list through the Open Cut List extension from SketchUp. I think it's a free extension when you go to the extension warehouse. And that gives you an overview of all the cuts that you need to make. I think I used 7 sheets of 3/4 inch plywood, 3 sheets of 1/4 inch, and 2 sheets of 1/2 inch. And when you set it up this way, it's a very effective way to make all the cuts. It gives you the actual diagram, everything you need to do to make the cuts on your plywood. It made the whole process very easy. This is the first time I've used the Open Cut List program from SketchUp. And again, it's a free program and it'll make your life a lot easier. And being able to go in and label everything. Once you're done with all the cuts, everything's labeled and you basically put it together just like a piece of IKEA furniture. It makes the whole process very simple. So instead of using lumber from the big box store, I was able to locate a local store called Amica. I believe they're in all throughout Florida, Atlanta, North Carolina. And it's basically a cabinet, lumber and hardware store. And I went there and was able to pick up all the 3/4 inch, 1/2 inch, and 1/4 inch plywood that I needed for this build. And it was very reasonable compared to the big box stores. And I also got the plywood pre-finished. I believe the 3/4 inch plywood I got pre-finished on one side, and then the 1/4 inch and 1/2 inch was pre-finished on both sides. And it's basically like a polyurethane clear finish, which is going to work out great for this project because I'm going to put the finished side on the inside of the cabinets, and it's just going to make for a lot nicer build and a lot less work. So it was well worth paying the little extra cost for the pre-finished plywood, and I still think even the pre-finished was cheaper than just the normal plywood I would have bought at the big box stores. This store also has all the hardware that you need for your cabinets. So in my case, I went ahead and got the soft close drawer slides for the drawers, and then the soft close hinges for the cabinet doors. So I'm going to start breaking down the 3/4 inch plywood first. And as you can see here, I went ahead and printed up everything from the Open Cut List program from SketchUp, which has the actual layout for all the cuts, the actual labeling for the cuts, and all the actual components. So as I'm cutting these out to their final lengths and widths, then I'll go back and label them and stack them up. And then once I'm done cutting everything out, I can then just assemble them just like a piece of IKEA furniture. So here at the table saw, I'm going to start breaking down the 3/4 inch plywood. And another thing that I like about the Open Cut List program is that it identifies all your through cuts. It's more of a bolder line on the plywood diagram. So it lets you know at what dimensions to make all your through cuts. That way you can stay here at the table saw and make all the through cuts. And so I was able to make all of them on all 7 sheets of plywood. And then once I made all the through cuts, it also allows you a 1/2 inch trim on around all the edges of the plywood. So you're able to go back and then just trim up all the factory edges, which are usually, a little rugged from, transporting the plywood and everything. So it allows you to finish up and cut off the factory edges. And all that's included in the cut list calculation. So you don't have to manually figure out anything. It just does it automatically for you. Next, I'm going to move over here to my miter saw and start making the cross cuts that I need to make on some of my pieces. Now, I like to make all my cuts that I can over at the table saw. So this cut here is just a rough cut. I will make a note of the factory edge there on the end of the plywood, and then I'll take this piece over to my table saw and put the final cut over at the table saw. And that's just the way I prefer to do it, because I think it makes for a more accurate cut. The more cuts that you can make here at your table saw, it's going to give you a more accurate cut and make the pieces square. And then once I'm done with that, I'm just going to go through my checklist and just mark off the pieces that I've cut out. Now it's back over to the miter saw to cut out the nailers and the stretchers. I'm going to start by just trimming off the factory edge, and then I've got my stop blocks set up here at my miter saw station for the exact lengths of the stretchers and nailers that I need to cut. And this is very useful for just making accurate, repetitive cuts. You really don't have to think about it. You set your stop block up, and then you go ahead and start making all your cuts. And that just ensures that everything is the exact same length on every piece. Now I'm going to start breaking down my 1/4 inch plywood. I don't have any through cuts on this plywood. So I am going to have to make a cross cut on the entire piece of plywood. So I'm going to use my DIY track saw guide and circular saw and go ahead and make the cross cut. Once I cut off this end of the plywood, then I can start making through cuts over at the table saw. So just like with the 3/4 inch plywood, I'm going to take my 1/4 inch plywood and start making the through cuts here at the table saw. And then once I get the through cuts done, I'll trim off, a 1/2 inch off the factory edge, just like I did before. And again, everything is outlined on the cut list sheet, so I don't have to think about anything here and just follow the cut list and make all the appropriate cuts. All this 1/4 inch plywood here will be used for the backs of all the base cabinets. With my 1/4 inch plywood broken down, I'm going to start breaking down my 1/2 inch plywood. And just like before, I don't have any through cuts through the entire sheet of plywood. So I'm using my DIY track saw guide and circular saw just to cut off this end of the plywood. And then once I get this end cut off, I'll go back over to the table saw and start making the through cuts. Now this 1/2 inch plywood is primarily going to be used for the backs of the wall cabinets. I'll also use some of this 1/2 inch plywood to make the drawer boxes I think I've got approximately 10 drawers that I need to make, and I'll make them out of this 1/2 inch plywood. So finally, a day later, I've finished all the cuts for the 3/4 inch, the 1/2 inch, and finally the 1/4 inch plywood. So now all the parts are finally cut out for my kitchen cabinets at Red Maple Cabin. So here are all the cabinet components, the bottoms and sides of the base cabinets, the nailers, stretchers, the tops, bottoms, and sides of the wall cabinets, the back of the base cabinets. Everything's here, and we're now ready to start installing the cabinets. Okay, so now with our cut list complete, everything's been checked off for both the 3/4 inch, 1/2 inch, and 1/4 inch plywood. The next thing we're going to do is start with our toe kicks. Now I've separated out the sides of our toe kicks from our toe kick front and backs. And what we're going to do with the sides is I'm going to drill 2 pocket holes on each end of the sides, and that's how we'll fasten the sides to the fronts and backs. And I'm going to be using this pocket hole jig here to drill in the pocket holes into the sides of the toe kicks. So if you'd like to build a pocket hole jig workstation like mine, I'll leave a link here in the videos so you can check that out. And you can see here I've labeled the pieces and then I've screwed drilled two pocket hole screws on each end of the board, and I'll just repeat that process for all the toe kick sides. So to attach the side of the toe kick to the front of the toe kick, I'm just going to use some glue here on the end grain. And then once I get it glued up here, I'll put it in a bar clamp just to secure the side to the front of the toe kick. And then with some pocket hole screws, I'll go ahead and screw in two pocket hole screws to fasten the side into the front of the toe kick. And then I'll repeat the same process on the other side piece. Once I have both pieces glued up, I can take both pieces and connect them to each other, and that will complete the toe kick for one of the base cabinets. Now with all the toe kicks assembled, I only had a total of 4 toe kicks. I'll start now preparing the base cabinet components and getting those ready so I can start assembling those. So I pulled out my pocket hole jig workstation, and I've also separated out my base cabinet bottoms, my stretchers and nailers, and I'm going to drill pocket holes into the bottoms. That's how we're going to attach the bottoms to the sides of the cabinets. And then I'm going to drill holes on each end of the stretchers and the nailers. The stretchers will go on the top of the cabinet. You'll have a front stretcher and a back stretcher. And then the nailers will go on the back side of the cabinet, where you'll have a top nailer and a bottom nailer. As far as the bottoms go, I'm going to drill my pocket holes 1 inch from the ends, and then on 6-inch centers. On the nailers and stretchers, I'm just going to pop 2 pocket holes on each end of those. So the next thing I need to do is cut some dados on the inside of the base cabinets, and it's going to be a 1/4 inch dado which will fit the back panel of the cabinet. So what I'm going to do is just use the material itself to get the distance away from the blade and the fence. This way the back panel will slide in and there'll be enough room to nail the back nailer to the back of the cabinet. So again, I'm just using the actual material itself to set up the distance here at the table saw on my fence. And then I can go ahead and cut a groove 1/8 of an inch thick, and then I'll bump the fence out to get the actual thickness that I need for the actual back panel. Now, you know, the back panel is 1/4 inch, but it's not going to be exactly a 1/4 inch. And again, I'm going to use the material itself to adjust the width of the actual dado. Since I'm going to be cutting a groove into my 3/4 inch plywood, I want to cut it so it's halfway in the plywood. So I'm using a 3/8 inch setup block to adjust the height of my dado. So my dado will only cut 3/8 of an inch into the actual bottom, top nailer, and the 2 sides. So now that I've ran all the pieces, the bottoms, the sides, the nailers and stretchers through, and have made one pass or one cut, I've got some scrap back piece here, and then I've got a nailer. So now I'm going to just bump the fence out a little bit, and I'll do a test cut until it fits, and then I'll go and run all the pieces back through. So now with all my cabinet components prepped and ready to go, we can start the assembly process. You can see here my 1/4-inch dado in the bottom of the cabinet, and then the 1/4-inch dado on the two sides of the cabinets. And then I've also got a 1/4-inch dado in the top stretcher. So now with everything ready, I'm just going to use some bar clamps just to clamp the bottom to the two sides, and then I'll just pop some pocket hole screws along the bottoms, and that's what will hook the bottoms to the sides of the cabinets. And then I'll repeat the same thing for the top stretchers. By assembling the base cabinet this way, I'm basically letting gravity do a lot of the work, and then I just need to take the back panel and slide it in the dados, the 1/4-inch dados that we cut earlier. And once I get the back panel slid in, then I can take the top stretcher, which we've got the 1/4-inch dado cut into, and I can install that, and then install the front stretcher, and then last install the top and bottom back nailers, and then that will complete the cabinet carcass. So on my larger base cabinets, I took and pre-drilled and countersank some holes along the back top stretcher. And basically what this is going to do is I'm going to come back with 1.25-inch screws and screw the top back stretcher to the top back nailer, and that's just going to give it more lateral support. I didn't do this for the smaller cabinets, but I think anything probably bigger than wider than a 20-inch cabinet, you probably do need to add these 1.25-inch screws. Okay, so now that I've completed the installation of the base cabinet carcasses, the next thing I'm going to do is start prepping the wall cabinets. And the first thing I'm going to have to do is I've separated out the tops and bottoms of the wall cabinets, and then the left and right sides of the wall cabinets. I'm going to focus my attention on the sides of the wall cabinets. What I'm going to need to do is cut a 1/2-inch rabbet along the back side of the sides, and that's where the back of the cabinet is going to recess into the wall cabinet. So here at the table saw, I'm going to cut a 1/2-inch rabbet on the sides. Once I get the rabbets cut on all the sides, then on the tops and bottoms, I'm going to take and drill pocket holes on the ends, roughly 1.5 inches from the end, and then on 6-inch centers. And that's how I'll hook the tops and bottoms to the sides of the cabinets, and then we'll set the back of the wall cabinets inside that rabbeted recess, and then fasten the back, make sure they're square, and then fasten the back of the cabinets, and that'll give the back of the cabinets the lateral support that they need. So the next thing I'm going to do is cut the rabbets on the sides, and then pocket hole the tops and bottoms. So I'm going to use a 3/8-inch setup block here at the table saw to set the height of my table saw blade, and that's the height that I'm going to cut the rabbet. Then I'm going to take the actual 1/2-inch plywood back and use that to space my fence away from the table saw blade, and that's where I'll make my first initial pass along the sides. And then I'll just bump the fence in closer and closer. Now, to do this, I will have to put a 0 clearance fence along my table saw fence, because I'm going to be bumping it all the way out or all the way in until it is at the very edge of the side of the cabinet. So now with the 1/2-inch rabbet cut into all the sides, I can come over here to my pocket hole workstation and start drilling in the pocket holes in the tops and bottoms of the cabinets. And like I had said before, I'm roughly drilling them a 1/2-inch or 1.5 inches from the sides, and then on 6-inch centers. So since the wall cabinets are only 12 inches wide, I'm basically drilling 3 pocket holes on each end of the tops and bottoms of the wall cabinets. Again, utilizing bar clamps to fasten the bottom to the sides. Once I've got everything lined up, then I'm going to take some 1.5 inch pocket screws and screw the bottom into the sides of the wall cabinets. And then I'll flip it over and do the same thing for the tops of the wall cabinets. And you'll notice here that I've got the pocket holes on the inside of the bottom of the cabinets. So they will be visible, so I'll have to address that issue later. But as far as the top of the cabinets go, the pocket holes will be facing out because you won't see the tops of the cabinets. Once I have the sides, tops, and bottoms fastened together, I'm going to take and run a bead of glue around the perimeter of the cabinet. Now this is on the back side of the cabinet where I've cut the 1/2 inch rabbet on the sides of the cabinet. So I'm going to apply a bead of glue along both sides and along the tops and bottoms. Then I'm going to take the back of the wall cabinet and set it in the 1/2 inch recess that we created with the rabbets. And then once I've got it set in there, I'm going to use 1.75 inch brad nails just to temporarily secure the back to the cabinet. And I'm going to check it for square as I start fastening in these brads. And then once I get all the brads fastened in, I will go back with some 1.25 inch screws. I'll pre-drill and countersink, and then I'll drill the 1.25 inch screws, and that will just lock it in very tight. That way we've got a lot of lateral support here on the back of the wall cabinets. So to hide the pocket hole screws along the bottom of the cabinets, I'm just going to apply a little glue, and I went ahead and cut some 1/4 inch plywood the same length and width as the bottom of the cabinets. And then for each individual wall cabinet, I'll take and install this 1/4 inch plywood and then just glue it to the bottom. Again, this is just to hide the pocket hole screws that are on the inside of the bottom of the cabinets. So as you can see around me, the workshop is full of base and wall cabinets. Next time we're going to take and build the drawers and the door fronts and also the countertops. Well, that's going to wrap up this video. I hope you found this video useful, and if you did, then please leave it a like. If you're new to the channel and you like DIY and woodworking projects, then I highly recommend that you click that subscribe button. It's free and painless, and I'd also ask that you ring that bell icon. That way you'll be notified of all our upcoming videos. To all my existing subscribers, I really appreciate all the support you've given this channel. I'll leave links in the video description below to where you can pick up all the tools and equipment that I used on this project. If you have any questions on how I did something or what I did, please leave them in the comments below and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. I'm Rick with the Ingrain Workshop. Until next time, have a wonderful day and God bless.